Hello, this is Momentary Unicorn, and I wanted to wish you a happy October. Today I thought we'd try a pumpkin study on a 32 by 32 canvas, if you would like to follow along. You can do this pretty much in any program that can put squares on a canvas. You don't have to have a drawing tablet. A mouse works just fine. A website called Pixilart, Pixil art.com, actually has a drawing program that you can use directly in the browser if you don't have one. Now this pumpkin is pretty symmetrical, so I'm going to be using the symmetry tool for this. I'll only be using the vertical one despite there being a horizontal version. I'm going to start out by kind of getting the rough shape of what I want. I'm not going to make it perfect right away. I just kind of want to block out how wide I want it to be on the canvas. I will be widening this at some point. I do use the bucket tool to fill it in, and then I go and I fix my shapes. Feel free to pause any time to catch up if you need to. From here, I decided to start with the shadows on the top of the pumpkin where the stem is. I may be a little too cautious with how I place my pixels here, but I am looking at the image as closely as I can and trying to imitate it. Of course, the side of your pumpkin is going to have some ribbing. You can see that they're pretty evenly spaced on this one. I do start the highlights a little bit here, but it's probably a little early to put those in. At any rate, these are actually temporary colors. I will be changing them later on in the video. And here I readjust the location of the pumpkin so I can start adding the stem. I opted to start with a purple color here, and I'm just aiming to block out the general shape, and then I end up making it a little more whimsical looking by giving it that little dip that the reference image has. It is important to remember that our light is kind of coming from a little bit to the upper left, and so I'm going to add the highlights in here to reflect that. A little bit of the look of the ribbon gets lost in the highlights there, but instead of just making it all highlight, I'm actually just going to lighten the shadow there a little bit, because I like how that looks, you know? And then I'm going to go touch up some of the top area and, figure out how to get it to look a little more round and less flat. And then I realized too that the frontal ribbing is a little too square, so I rounded that out too. And then from here, we're going to add a little bit more of our highlights, touch up an area that I wasn't satisfied with. Now, remember when you do this, you don't have to do the best, just do your best. If it doesn't end up looking perfectly like the picture, it's fine, because we're working on a 32 by 32 canvas. We're gonna lose some details, but this is a pretty simple subject, so we should be able to do this all right. Alright, so from here we're going to start changing our colors to be a little more realistic. It's not going to be exactly like the photo. It may be tempting to use the most saturated orange that you can get a hold of, but it may not look very good if you don't know how to handle it well. But I tend to use a more muted version of the color. It's just a preference of mine. Now as you can see, the yellow highlights are way too harsh, and our shadows definitely need some changing. So we're going to go ahead and take care of those now. If I'm trying to avoid too gross of a brown color with the shadows, I'm probably going to use a reddish orange instead of just a plain orange or a yellow. Yellow will especially give you a really ugly color. You do see here that I am touching up some areas that I wasn't satisfied with again. I do this all the time. If you don't like making these tiny little tweaks, it's no big deal. Do what you gotta do. Now we're going to be adding another color to the mix. I wanted to add more shadows in to give it just a little bit more depth, and it makes it look more interesting. There is a little bit of rim lighting, I think, on the right side of the pumpkin. I didn't reflect it super accurately, but I did what I could. That light is actually there because there was light reflecting off of the other pumpkins around it, most likely. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. That does happen. And from here, we'll add some more shadows along the bottom. Just wanted to mention real quick that I do use Pexels.com for a lot of my reference images. That is Pexels.com. And from here, we're going to be touching up highlights, adding some shadows here and there, and just in general tweaking it. Alright, now we want to tackle this stem. In the picture, it looks like it might be black, but I think it's closer to like a dark green or a dark bluish color. I didn't color pick the image because I'm clearly got a brighter orange than what's in there, and I'm just kind of using colors that I like. I will be posting this on deviantart.com for page decor and all that, so I am doing this with dark mode in mind. That's why I chose not to do the super dark green-blue that I had. So that super bright yellow that we were using in the beginning actually could come in handy for some interesting highlights on different parts of the pumpkin. If you look at the preview box up at the top left of the image, it does help it, but if you put too much of it, it really hurts it, so you gotta watch that. I did need a little bit more highlight on the left middle-ish of the pumpkin. And I also did a little bit of dithering, which can add some texture to your image, or it can kind of smooth the color transition out depending on how you're using it. I did kind of remove it at some point to see which one I preferred. I think I did end up adding it back in the long run. From here, it's adding more highlights and everything to the stem. I already had the darkest color that I wanted for the stem set down and everything in there. I did kind of want the stem to appear like it was twisting a little bit, and maybe the tip of it is facing the viewer. I should have said this a long time ago, but I'm always checking my little preview box to see if it's coming out the way I want it to. And from here, we just add some little speckly highlights on the stem. I think it looks kind of neat and kind of cute. I did end up using a blue for this instead of a green. I just wanted that extra little pop of color to kind of contrast with the orange. I did do my best to make sure the pumpkin itself is accurate to what it should be in real life. I didn't intend on it being perfectly like the picture because I know that's not entirely possible because we are on a very small canvas here. But you know, there's a chance that if I do work it a little bit more, I can get it a bit more accurate. But as it stands, I'm actually really satisfied with this right now, so I'll probably end up drawing another one again in the future. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to let go of being a perfectionist with this stuff and just move on to another subject. That way you can take the time to learn a little bit faster. It's probably better to fail fast and fail often with artwork because you do learn better by making mistakes. And honestly, as long as you're putting the time and the effort in, you're only going to get better. So that being said, I wish you the best of luck on your art journey. Thanks for drawing with me.